Now, your taxes could soon look very different. It's been 30 years since we've seen a major overhaul of our tax system, but Donald Trump and Republican lawmakers have made reforming the system a strong priority. For more on the potential changes, we turn to the director of the Tax Policy Center, Len Burman. He joins us from Washington, and we should note he previously served in the Clinton administration. Len, welcome. Your organization did an in-depth analysis of the plan that House Republicans are proposing. Give us the headline. What do they plan to change here?
Well, they cut tax rates. The top rate on businesses would fall from 35% to 25%, actually 20% on corporations. The top rate on individuals would fall from over 40% under current law, when you include the Obamacare surtaxes, to 33%. An interesting thing that the House does is that they would move to a so-called territorial or a destination-based tax system, which means that there'd be a tax on imports and a rebate on exports. This is actually pretty common in the rest of the world through their value-added taxes, but it would be novel for the U.S. They'd also allow companies to immediately deduct the cost of new investments rather than depreciating them over time, and they would lose interest deductions. Overall, the plan would reduce revenues by about $3 trillion. It would boost the economy somewhat, but it wouldn't be enough to offset that fairly big revenue loss.
And the aim for Donald Trump and Republicans seems to be to make things easier for businesses and put less of a tax burden on taxpayers. But along the income spectrum, which level of taxpayers really see the most gains under this plan?
Well, those people at the top get the biggest savings. I mean, they benefit the most from the rate cuts. I didn't mention there's also they repeal the estate tax, which only affects very high-income people. In Trump's plan, the richest 0.1% of Americans, people earning over about $4 million, we get an average tax cut of over $1 million a year. The tax cuts are a little bit smaller in the House GOP plan, but they are all pretty well tilted towards high-income people.
Sometimes the theory is that if you give these tax cuts to the most wealthy, you give these tax cuts to businesses, it helps boost the economy. But you actually call some of this voodoo economics. So what's the truth here?
So to be fair, it was George H.W. Bush who called them voodoo economics, but I do like the term. There is a point that if you cut marginal tax rates, all else equal, it'll encourage businesses to invest more, encourage people to save and work more. The problem is that the plans would massively increase the public debt, and over time that would tend to push up interest rates. And as interest rates rise, that would actually negate the effect of the tax rate cuts on the incentives to invest or other things. I mean, think if interest rates went up significantly, home sales would fall because mortgages would be more expensive, people would be less able to buy cars and other big ticket items, and businesses would invest less. So over the long term, our analysis shows that the House GOP plan, and even more so the Trump plan, because the deficits are twice as big, would actually hurt the economy.
Now, if this new administration quickly agrees to some kind of new tax code, how long would it be until your typical taxpayer sees a benefit?
It could easily show up on the 2017 income tax returns. When George W. Bush took office, his tax cuts went in effect in 2001, and they applied to that tax year, and that's fairly common. The question is really what the tax cuts will look like overall, and it's not as obvious as you might think. You think, well, with a Republican in the White House and Republicans in Congress, this is a pretty simple case where you could get a reform plan they'd all agree on. But for example, the business tax cuts, I mentioned that there's a tax on imports in the House GOP plan. Companies that are very dependent on imports, like Walmart and Macy's, are unenthusiastic about seeing the price of their products go up. Economists say, well, that wouldn't happen actually because exchange rates would adjust, but this is a case where people don't really believe economists.
It's very interesting, troubling or appealing, depending where you are on the economic spectrum. And we'll have to wait to see all of this and how it spins out. The director of the Tax Policy Center, Len Burman. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me.